Hello, I'm Jaffe Rosenberg, the host of Designing Successful Startups, where today's guest is Krenar Komoni.
SIM card providers realized there's so many devices going from across countries that they needed all these roaming agreements to happen. And timing was also perfect. Right? And SIM cards on chips. That was when I started Tive. I was like, I have to do it right now. I cannot wait because it's going to be perfect. So we have one SIM card there that works all over the world.
And is there an account essentially for each device?
Each device has a unique IMEI number, unique SIM card number. We have obviously one global account where we see all the devices, and then this major network operator. There's also major virtual network operators. We work with a major network operator, and this major network operator has roaming agreements with, I believe, almost 200.
We dive deep into the journeys of innovative founders who are transforming industries through grit, vision, and relentless execution. Today, we're joined by Krenar Komoni, founder and CEO of Tive, a company revolutionizing supply chain visibility with real-time tracking technology. From his childhood in Kosovo to becoming an entrepreneur in Massachusetts, Krenar's story exemplifies the immigrant founder journey. After being rejected by MIT 3 times, he ironically ended up working closely with MIT professors and becoming the first employee at an MIT professor's startup. Now at Tive, Krenar has created smart trackers that provide real-time location and condition monitoring for shipments across the globe, from strawberries to servers to Pokemon cards. In this episode, Krenar shares how he navigated near bankruptcy with just $20,000 left in the bank, the origin of the 4-letter company name, and profound influence his mother's courage as a war reporter had on his entrepreneurial resilience. Join us for an inspiring conversation about building technology that's changing how the world's goods move from point A to point B. And hello, Krenar. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Joby, great seeing you.
Great to see you. I did not know before where you were from, so I'm going to ask you to talk here about where you're originally from and also where you live now.
Well, I'm originally from Kosovo. I grew up there until I was 17 years old, and then came to the United States to study. I went to high school as an exchange student, and then college and master's. Now I live in Massachusetts. It's my home now. Actually, I just want to say something because every time I think people should figure out where their home is when they land in an airport. And every time I land to Logan, I'm like, wow, this is my home. It's just, I can go to any other airport. Doesn't matter whether it's Kosovo or anywhere. But when I land into Logan, I feel like that's my home.
So have you ever heard of the brand of stationary bike called a Peloton?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one.
I do not have one, but yeah.
I have one. And Tuesday mornings is when I do my Peloton workout. And this morning, it's total coincidence. I don't take their classes. I do their scenic rides, and I always just pick the next one. And the next one was Kosovo, and it was Peja, P-E-J-A.
Peja, yeah, that's
Peja.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So I rode through this beautiful countryside, very mountainous, for 45 minutes this morning, getting in the mood to talk to you.
And completely random. That's awesome.
Completely random. It was the epitome of random.
That's meant to be.
It is a very mountainous country. Is the whole country pretty mountainous?
What's interesting is if you look at Kosovo and you look at the map, it's quite flat and right in the center, but it's surrounded by mountains. It's almost like it was created that way to be protected.
To be protective.
Yeah.
And so I imagine the biggest cities are in that middle section then.
They're all in that middle section, yeah. And I grew up in the capital, Pristina. That's where
you grew up.
Yeah.
But you left there fairly young if you came over to the States to go to high school.
Yeah, 17 years old. And then went as a senior to high school up in Vermont, Northfield High School.
Where'd you go?
I went to Tufts University.
Oh, Tufts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for my undergrad, I did it. I'll tell you the MIT story though. Here's maybe I've never told this story, but when I applied to Norwich University, this was an undergrad. It was in Northfield, Vermont, where I went to high school. So I applied to Norwich, and the other school I applied to was MIT. I only applied to 2 schools for my undergrad, and I didn't get into MIT. And then for my master's, I wanted to do my master's. I applied to Tufts University. And then I applied to, I think, a few other colleges, like maybe 2 other ones, but I also applied to MIT. And I didn't get into MIT. And then for my PhD, I applied to Tufts, I applied to UC Berkeley, Stanford, but I also applied to MIT, and I didn't get into MIT.
So 3 times.
3 times I didn't get into MIT. But the funny thing is, I worked for this company called Bitwave Semiconductor, and we built the world's first software-defined radio on a chip, 2G, 3G, 4G radio. And one of the professors there was an MIT professor that was helping us design chipsets and look into the next technology and where the MIT professors would come to talk. It was a really cool company. When this MIT professor, Joel Dawson, started a new startup called Era Devices, I was the first one he called to join as the first employee at his startup. And then I went to MIT, went to his lab, went to this other professor's, Dave Perot's lab, and they really liked me, and I joined this company called Era Devices, and we built the world's most efficient base stations. So I worked a lot with MIT people and surrounded by MIT, but never went to school there.
There's another way to say this, that MIT people have realized the errors of their school, and they keep wanting to work with you and bring you over and have you pretend that you went to MIT so that they'll feel better.
Yeah, and one of my board members is also an MIT grad. So there we go.
So we share an investor. So Hyperplane invested in both companies. Hopefully you give them a better return. I don't think I'm going to give them that great a return on this one. We'll see, but we're talking to buyers now.
I think they're definitely at 20 or 30x since pre-seed.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they should invest in more non-MIT grads then from now on. That's proof. Your startup that Hyperplane has invested in is Tive. Maybe you could tell us, first of all, where did the name come from and what is the company?
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer the second one first because I think it is easier to answer the first one second. So what we do at Tive is pretty straightforward. We help companies all over the world understand and track their shipments. Everything that moves from point A to point B, we are involved and help companies track their shipments. And the way we do that is we've created these trackers right here. All they do is press a button, put this tracker inside of a trailer, inside of a container, usually on the last pallet. So there's maybe 20 pallets inside of a container or a trailer, and it could be strawberries, could be servers, could be Pokemon cards, could be anything there. And then you take this tracker, they press a button, put it on the top of the pallet, close the door, and then real time they get information of where the shipment is. Very accurate location, but also the condition. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it wet? Did somebody open the trailer? Because there's a light sensor that can tell them. And this connects to 2G, 3G, 4G connectivity all over the globe. And it also sends all that information in real time. So they can open up our software. We have a software platform that it's very intuitive and they can see all of that information. But the way I came up with a name was I really wanted a name that is simple. I started the company in June of 2015. I incorporated it. So we're talking like 2 weeks before I'm trying to find the name. And I had a small prototype that I had built. And I was thinking first I wanted a 4-letter name because 3 letters is like an architecture firm or a law firm. 5 letters was too much, in my opinion, or 6. 2 names was too much, like Dropbox or GitHub or GitLab, or it just felt like 2. There's a lot of companies did a great job with 2 names, but I felt the time was like 4 letters, similar like Dell, Lego, Lyft, Uber, IKEA. I mean, talk about the biggest names of 4 letters. I'm like, I'm going to make a 4-letter company name. And when I had this prototype in my hand, I still remember driving, I think it was on 990, going from like Boston to Worcester because I was commuting quite a bit. I'm like, what does this thing do? And the words that came to my mind were active, intuitive, sensitive, quantitative. And I'm like, oh, they all have the same suffix. Tive, Tiv. But I'm like, nobody's going to call it Tiv. So I'm going to call it Tive. It's like this high five, live, Tive, hive. So that's it. That's how I came up with the name.
Is it Tive.com?
It is now. So when I started the company, it was Tive.io and then Tive.co. And Tive.com was always taken. And it was this, when I raised the first round the Series A, not the first round. When we did $12 million at the Series A round, I told Raju, the MIT grad, I'm like, listen, I think I can get Tive.com, but it's gonna cost us. He wants 300,000, but I think I can get it for 150. He's like, okay, let's get it. So this guy was in France, in like south of France somewhere, and my wife speaks a little French. So I had my wife negotiating with him in French. And he was so like flaky, it was really difficult to communicate with him. And I got my lawyers, we signed some paperwork, and he didn't want cash. I had to buy a domain name, which I won't tell you the name of. I had to buy that domain name, and I had to do a swap to get Tive.com. And that's how it happened. But we got it. I got Tive.com in December of 2020.
You were still a startup and willing to invest 150,000 for the name.
Oh, I believe in the name so much.
No, I don't mean the name. I mean the .com versus .io.
I think it makes a huge difference in the world. If somebody just Googles Tive now, if they usually spontaneously, they just go to Tive.com. They don't want to turn on.
I know, that's true. I have a couple questions about how the technology works. So when RFID first came out, people were talking about how it was going to be the thing you would glue to the pallets and it was going to be so cheap. But of course, because it's passive, it can't do any of the computing that you're talking about. It can only basically say, I'm here. You had to walk this fine line between, okay, that doesn't give you much functionality versus cost and complexity of your device. I'm sure because you'd worked in hardware before, you had a pretty good sense of that. How did you think about, did you decide what the functionality had to be first? Or did you say, okay, this is the largest, the most power that will survive these kinds of trips? Well, how did you come at it?
That's a very, very good question. So I think I had one thing that maybe as a founder coming into this industry, advantage that maybe others didn't have. So coming from that chip design background, I had a view on where LTE chipsets were going. So back then in 2015, it was an LTE chip. It was 4G, very power hungry, very expensive. Obviously, Intel, Qualcomm were kind of the only two companies making that LTE chip. But I knew that there were newer releases of LTE chip that were coming in the future that would be lower cost, lower power, and only focused for Internet of Things communication. So it's called LTE IoT, and then it got changed to Cat M1, being a little more specific in this podcast here. So I could tell where that future was going. The other thing, while at MIT, I also met other folks who were part of this RFID program with Walmart. Like, you're right, it was a huge thing. Yeah, we're going to put it on every single pallet, and Walmart mandated everybody to put RFIDs. But what I realized there was that the challenge that it never proliferated was because of infrastructure. Like, RFIDs are great, but you needed this infrastructure all over every store, every warehouse, every distribution center to be able to get in when it came in, when it got out. And it needed to be 100% reliable. If there was 10 RFIDs, you couldn't just read 8. You had to read 10. There was no interference. So there was so many challenges.
Yeah.
And they gave up on that. So there was two things that then I made a decision when I started Tive. I said, obviously, this industry needed to track shipments. I said to myself, one, I could see where LTE was going. And two, I will never, ever build a product that requires a gateway. I want a fully standalone product that is active. We're going to figure out how to make it very cost effective, and it's going to take time. And finally, we got here. But I want it to be standalone. So this can be thrown anywhere in the globe. It will automatically connect to a tower. It will automatically sense everything by itself. There is no need for a gateway. There is no need for a router. That also has its own power, right? And
how can it connect to a tower without that device having, an account with Verizon or somebody?
Well, that's the other part that was happening in the globe back in 2015 through 2016, 2017. SIM card providers realized there's so many devices going from across countries that they needed all these roaming agreements to happen. And timing was also perfect, right? And SIM cards on chips that was when I started Tive. I was like, I have to do it right now. I cannot wait because it's going to be perfect. So we have one SIM card there that works all over the world.
So is there an account essentially for each device?
Sure. Each device has a unique IMEI number, unique SIM card number. We have obviously one global account where we see all the devices, and then this major network operator. There's also major virtual network operators. We work with a major network operator, and this major network operator has roaming agreements with, I believe, almost 200 countries. They don't even call countries, there's territories, because there's not many countries in the world, and with almost 500 plus different carriers all over the world that we can connect to 2G, 4G, anywhere we are.
Those of us with just regular phones, we'll go into dead zones. The town next to me doesn't seem to like cell phone towers, Lincoln.
Yeah,
And there are going to be places.
there are.
I assume that it just keeps trying. Is that right?
Right. So a couple of things. One, because of the shape of the device, and I don't know if I have one that's open actually. So you can see this antenna right here. We've done a lot of work on the antenna to be able to work almost a little, I would say, better than a phone. Phone has some kind of limitations when it comes to size and everything. Here we've done an antenna that's perfect for the bands that we want, so that he can go, if it's not in Lincoln, Mass, maybe he can connect to a tower that's further away. However, there are dead zones. And in the dead zones, what happens is the tracker will store the data. So if it senses temperature, humidity, light, it will store it. It will try transmit it, but if it can't, it will store it, and can store it for many days, because we have a pretty big memory in here. And then when it gets to the next tower, it will upload all that data with timestamps. So it's pretty straightforward.
And
It happens quite a bit, by the way, in the ocean.
I was about to
Middle
ask,
of the ocean.
yeah, how does it work in the ocean?
So the middle of the ocean, we connect maybe even a mile away sometimes when the vessel leaves, because it's at the port, you have cellular towers. But once it's in the middle of the ocean, there are no cell towers. So we'll store all that data for days and then upload it to the next port. However, the customer wants to know the real-time location of the vessel. And there are ways to get that real-time location of the vessel, because we partner with vessels, with shipping lines, and they know where all those vessels are. We figure out based on the container number that the customer gives us which container, which vessel the container is on, and then we can show in real time the vessel. And when it gets to the other side of the port, we can start uploading all that data and show real time using the tracker. And sometimes what happens with customers, that's why they love the trackers, is they say, hey, the vessel left, but the tracker's still showing at the port of, I don't know, Long Beach or LA, or like it hasn't moved. And then customers like, oh my God, my container didn't even make it on the vessel. So suddenly they can now call the shipping line, get it to the next vessel, and be able to save. Sometimes customers who don't know that, they can waste days
Well, if it's
at ports.
a whole truckload of bananas, they better get it moving quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
or yeah.
Is it able to tell on a one of the huge container ships? There are probably 700 that are have refrigeration in the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And if the refrigeration fails, there's a lot of money that's getting lost if it's frozen salmon or if it's even bananas. I actually did a little startup that was trying to help them predict when these units would fail.
Oh, wow.
Based on their long history of, okay, the oil was changed on this date, and it turns out these things fail this many weeks or months after the oil was changed. They can't tell if it fails, but you could. I mean, your device would be able to tell.
Yeah, so I mean, the vessel usually has like a panel. They can tell where everything's plugged, and if there's a failure on the power side, and they can get that information, right, to make sure. But sometimes there's a couple of things that could happen. One, they forget to plug it while they're waiting, maybe to load, and suddenly the refrigeration unit is not plugged into power. The second one, which is also common, is the setting could be wrong. Like we had a customer supposed to be at -4, but they didn't see the negative. So the person who set the setting on the reefer just put 4 instead of -4. And suddenly that was a big difference. In this case was Celsius. Instead of -4, they put 4 Celsius.
It's above
freezing. I mean, the vessel doesn't know, like it's plugged in, it's fine, everything's good. It can't tell the negative sometimes. People forget that. But because our settings on the track, because our settings on our software say it should be at -4, hey, somebody put it at 4, suddenly you get an alarm. And they were able to call the logistics company and resolve the issue within within 30 minutes or so, or an hour, and they were able to save a shipment. This was a while back when I started the company. And there's cases like this that's happened quite a bit. Human error.
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show. The devices that you just had in your hand, that device,
Yes.
they're cute.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're with chocolates. Sometimes like, oh, I should be chocolate. Anyways,
What's the business model for the customers? They sign up for a contract with you. They're going to buy a certain number of those units. You're going to make a lot more money off of the monitoring service than you are off of the hardware. Is that a good guess?
so it's funny. We it's maybe single digit, maybe around 5% of our customers we monitor their shipments.
Oh, they want to do it themselves?
They do it themselves. We have 975 customers, almost 1,000. We're gonna get to 1,000 here in the next 30 days.
So do you sell them the software by the,
So-
the enterprise-wide model or what?
Yeah, we have 3 tiers, plus premium, essential, depending on the tier and what they need, and depending on the volume of trackers, they pay a software fee, and then they commit to, I'm gonna buy 1,200 trackers a year, 100 a month, 300 a quarter, or 600 now, 600 later. And they buy those trackers, they turn them on, they put them in shipment. Usually they use them only once. At the end of the shipment, we will work with them to recycle them, and we give you credit. If they can reuse the trackers, they will actually recharge the tracker and reuse it themselves. And they pay a monthly or yearly fee if they want to use the tracker. But there's a software fee and a single-use tracker fee that they pay. But it's at the end, when they blend it, you divide that by number of shipments, the whole thing, and you look at it, how much it costs per shipment. It's still very, very lucrative for businesses to know where their stuff is.
You've got this, the investors, of course, love this, the annual recurring revenue from the devices, and you're going to be charging them an annual fee on the software at the very least for maintenance.
There's software and the people who reuse the trackers, that is 100% recurring revenue, like definitely ARR. But the other one, the ones where they commit to buy 1,200, is extremely reoccurring. I also call that almost ARR, but it's highly, highly reoccurring. It has like an NRR of net revenue retention of 130%. When the customer commits, like they want to buy 1,000, next year they buy 1,300. Next year they buy 16. It just the nature at which they buy and shipping, right? It's very recurring.
Is it almost always a truckload or one of those big boxes that goes on the ships? That's the size that it's assigned to?
Today, I would say yes. That's about 95% of the case, maybe 90% of the cases is a full truckload, full container load. In life science and pharma, usually it's per package because the value of the package is larger, bigger, and they put them on every single package. But most of it is full truckload for container load. Obviously, the cost of these are going to go down with time. Like that's the business we're in.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we follow very, very closely, where chipsets are going, where manufacturing is going. As this becomes lower cost, people are going to put it on every single pallet. After every single pallet, they put in every item. It's just a matter of time, Joe. It's just a matter of time.
So this all sounds like everything's gone according to plan, but I got to ask, what's a really difficult moment in the life of Tive so far?
Nothing goes to plan. Yes, maybe if you zoom out completely and you look at a decade of work, I would say it's gone quite well. But then if you do the micro weeks and days and months and minutes and hours, nothing goes to plan. But the most difficult part, I would say, was when, and I've told this story, but when we were running out of money back in 2019, early 2019, late 2018, I could see we only had, not much money in the bank. So I had to go from 16 people or so down to 8. And we're just like, we're going to figure out how to survive. And then we went down to from almost July 2019 when we had only $20,000 in the bank. And that time was the most, I would say the last 2 months of that time, or a month of that time, between May, June, July, was the most difficult time of, I would say, Tive, but also my life, because my mom also passed away in August of 2019, which was also pretty hard. And she was going through a lot during that time. Watching that and trying to make the company survive was quite challenging.
I'm sure.
I had that was the real test for me and for the business. And one thing that I was telling myself, well, I think it's a good test for every founder or entrepreneur, is I was able to say yes to this question. If the company went bankrupt, would I figure out a way to buy it back from the investors and start it again? And for me, the answer was yes. I would go on these long runs and try to like picture the world and where it's going to be and what we're going to do with this company. And the answer is always a resounding yes. During that month, I talked to 150 investors, angel investors, VCs, buyers, just anyone I could find, and found this guy Martin Hubert, he was the CEO of a company called Freightgate. He decided to put 100,000 on a secured note. Like if I failed, he would own the whole company. And my current investors agreed because they were like, there was no other choice. So we signed that, and then after that, I kept raising more on that note. The note was half the valuation of the previous round, so that hurt me quite a bit on dilution personally, but it was definitely the right thing.
I actually had an opportunity to, out of the ashes of one company that really met its demise in disastrous way, there was IP that we had developed. I said to the investors, basically, how much would you sell me that IP for? And they said $1 million. And then somebody on the board said to another member, I think he's trying to flip it. He's going to get it for $1 million and he's going to be able to sell it for $2 million. So we should raise the price to $2 million. And I said, you guys got to be kidding me. I went to the lawyers who were doing the liquidation for the benefit of creditors, and I said, how much could I get the patents directly from you? And she said, oh, if you wait 3 weeks, I'm sure no one will want them. You can have them for $65,000.
There we go.
And I did, and the next company 7 years later sold for $125 million.
Wow, amazing. In my case, I didn't do that, obviously. So all my didn't have to. So my early investors are very, very happy.
You're in much better shape. Throughout this whole time and for your previous companies, like all startups, you had to have grit. I know you had a lot of sleepless nights, but you still had to have grit to do these things. And I would love to know, what's your grit story? Where did it come from?
Oh, that's I think it comes from my mom. Now that I think a little bit about it live on this show, she's the person with the most grit I've ever known in my life. So growing up in Kosovo, we were Albanians, so it was tough. They took everybody out of jobs. My mom lost her job. She was a radio reporter. She would do news in the mornings in the radio. She figured out a way how to, I don't know, a few weeks later, get on a radio, on a Turkish radio, and speak a different language and get a job at a radio in Turkey, and obviously report about what was happening in Kosovo from our home, from our house. She would be on the phone. She figured out how to make money that way. And then she figured out how to open she studied English and Albanian language. So that was her master's and her undergrad. And in our kitchen, she set up a kitchen table, and we would bring students my age, like I was, I don't know, 10 years old. We would sit we would sit in the kitchen, and she would teach us English, and they would pay, I don't know, maybe $10 a month or $5 a month. And she figured out how to make money. She's the real entrepreneur with a lot of grit. And just watching my mom being in the worst position, right, as a human with no job, have no opportunities to be able to create opportunities out of thin air, out of nothing, just with that willingness. I was like, if she can do it, I need to learn from her, and I can do anything. And that grit has carried me through Tive, because when I was alone on a truck installing a tracker by myself as the only founder, I mean, starting the company back in 2015, 2016, sometimes you think, what am I doing here? Like, maybe I should go get a job. But you have this belief that I just got to keep going, another day, another day, another day. And that concept of one day at a time and never giving up. And just, I think of my mom a lot of times throughout my life. And she's the reason why I'm great.
That's like Like a lot of founders, that was an amazing story about grit. I really I admire that.
She was also a war reporter. So during the war, she would go in areas where literally maybe close to Paya or some other areas where there's just war happening. And she would record live videos of what was happening and report, and they would take it, then ship it to Turkey, and then Turkey would play it live. And I think she had a big impact on telling the world what was happening in Kosovo. But that's a lot of bravery, I think. The online.
How many kids was she raising?
Me and my brother, 16 months younger, yeah, and raising 2 kids.
Pretty cool, pretty amazing. Great woman. Well, thanks for telling that story. Tive sounds great. Your progress so far is impressive. I think it's a safe bet for me to say the hardest days are behind you.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Yeah.
There's always going to be challenges, right? But these are scaling challenges and bigger challenges. Like, I think we're now the largest real-time tracking company in the world when it comes to inside shipments.
Mm-hmm.
And to get here has been it's been fun. And I think where it's going, it's even more fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for doing this. Appreciate your coming on here.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really enjoyed it.
Now, your founder's toolkit takeaways. Takeaway 1, vision beyond current technology. Great founders can see where technology is heading before others. Krenar knew LTE chipsets would become smaller, cheaper, and more power efficient for IoT applications. By anticipating this trend, he designed a product that seemed ambitious at the time, but became increasingly feasible as the technology evolved. Always build for where the technology curve is going, not where it is today. Takeaway 2, solve infrastructure problems with standalone solutions. When entering a market with previous failed attempts, analyze why those attempts didn't work. Krenar recognized that RFID tracking failed because it required extensive infrastructure. By creating a standalone device that works anywhere without gateways or additional equipment, Tive eliminated adoption barriers. The best solutions require minimal infrastructure change while delivering maximum value. Takeaway 3, the ultimate founder test. During Tive's darkest moment, with only $20,000 left in the bank, Krenar asked himself, if this company went bankrupt, would I buy it back from investors and start again? When your answer is an immediate yes, you've found a mission worth fighting for. This level of conviction carries you through the inevitable valleys of the startup journey. Takeaway 4, inherited grit. Krenar's resilience came from watching his mother create opportunities from nothing during difficult times in Kosovo. She taught English from the kitchen table and became a war reporter to support the family. Look to your personal history for sources of grit and determination. Often, our greatest entrepreneurial strengths come from witnessing how others overcame adversity before us. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jotham Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.